Hi, everyone.
Hello. We left off in Acts 21 at verse 26. Surprise when Paul gets to Jerusalem. He's there for, he says, the reason of getting to worship with his fellow Jews and Christians at Pentecost, at the great annual celebration. But when he gets there, he's asked to do something for good public relations with his fellow Jews, and we'll see what he's willing to do at James and the elders' urging in this verse, starting in verse 26 and working through to verse 32.
Then Paul took the men along the next day and cleansed himself ceremonially with them, and went into the temple to give notice of the days to be fulfilled for the ceremonial cleansing, until the offering should be presented for each one of them. Now when the 7 days were about to be concluded, the Jews from Asia, on beholding him in the temple, began to throw all the crowd into confusion, and they laid their hands upon him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man that teaches everybody, everywhere, against the people, and the law, and this place. And what is more, he even brought Greeks into the temple, and has defiled this holy place." For they had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian, in the city with him, but they were imagining Paul had brought him into the temple. And the whole city was set in an uproar, and a running together of the people occurred. And they laid hold of Paul and dragged him outside the temple, and immediately the doors were closed. And while they were seeking to kill him, information came up to the commander of the band that all Jerusalem was in confusion. And he at once took soldiers and army officers and ran down to them. And when they caught sight of the military commander and the soldiers, they quit beating Paul.
Oh. So Paul goes there not to start a riot, but the rumors about what he's doing somewhere else follow him into the temple. How could this happen? Well, he's there in the temple to follow the legal procedure of the law of Moses about offerings. And he's willing to do this because, as James and the elders have urged, the rumors are already going around that he's doing the very things that now they're shouting he's doing, i.e. opposing the law of Moses and this place. Yet he's there at that very moment worshiping in this place, apparently for the whole 7 days. As we saw back in Acts chapter 2, the people are in the habit of going up to the temple. Those in Jerusalem are going up to the temple daily to worship with their fellow Jews.
So I would say both ex-witnesses and Christians should think about verse 26, that he goes there and does this ceremonial cleansing with the other men that he was encouraged to take there.
Jews.
And to do an offering. So how comfortable are we with that?
That's
Thinking he's a Christian, but he's still doing Jewish things, following the Jewish festival and practices of the Jewish people.
Even performing an offering, a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But the rumors that James has already heard about now follow Paul and his companions, Jewish companions, right into the temple. So this riot that starts, it's not started by people overhearing what he's saying, as if he's preaching against Moses in this place and preaching Jesus in the temple. That's not how the riot breaks out, is it?
No. They repeat what they've heard about Paul. And it even in verse 29 says that they were imagining that Paul had defiled the temple by bringing in someone they had just seen him with.
Yeah, in the city.
Not in the temple, but yeah, in the city they'd seen him with a Gentile.
This Trophimus, the Ephesian, apparently a Gentile, who they have seen him companioning, is that a word? Companioning with in the city of Jerusalem?
In fellowship with.
And the rumor's gone around that he's got Trophimus up in the temple itself.
Yeah.
And that is imagined, as it says in the silver sword doesn't say imagined, it says they assumed
Yeah. And when James spoke, he said there are rumors going around. So this is all hearsay. And, just this whole thing made me think of something that one of our past ministers told us during his ministry. He used to say, and this was Victor Shepherd, might as well name him, he used to say that most of the misunderstandings that people have are based on misunderstandings. Like that, most of the things that they, I said that wrong. Most of the reasons that we have troubles is based on misunderstandings
And conflicts.
Yeah. So if there's trouble, it's usually because somebody has misunderstood. So to me, that is something that we should learn, to not jump to a conclusion.
Well, this is the value of the law of Moses in a single situation, that they're not eyewitnesses to the things they have heard.
Mm-hmm.
They're going on someone else's testimony. And according to
Right.
the law of Moses, of course, the very thing they're saying they're upholding here, they are violating the law.
Mm-hmm.
They are not basing their judgment of Paul upon anything they themselves have experienced.
No. Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting in terms of our prejudices as Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
We think that the devil has got all the religions out there, but he's also got the governments. But
Yeah.
God uses Rome.
So we have to think about that. What is our attitude about the political world? And what is our attitude about Christendom?
Yeah.
And what is it based on? Is it based on facts, or is it based on what we've heard from other people? It's not by personal experience usually, but we carry a lot of these things without being aware of it, that we're carrying
Our prejudices.
And you have to get past that. I had to get past that.
It took some years.
It did. And it took, a little bit of willingness to spend some time with people that you had these prejudices about.
Mm-hmm. These people have no experiences of Paul. They don't know him.
Mm-hmm.
That will play out very interestingly in the next segment when we get to the end of the chapter 21 and 22. But right here, it's interesting what God does. I mean, we've already established that the Jewish religion is the true religion, but God now uses the governments of this world, Rome specifically. And why is it, by the way, that Rome can respond so quickly to this? Because Rome already has a garrison, a citadel, on the corner of the temple.
Yeah.
For this type of situation specifically, that if a riot breaks out, the Romans can respond to it instantly. And God uses Roman law and Roman justice to interfere with the people who have the true religion. And this is the God of the Bible here, who doesn't follow our rules. So when you're a witness, you already are prejudiced. You're prejudiced in the direction of God has abandoned the governments of this world. They're all in the domain of Satan, and certainly all the religions of this world are in the domain of Satan.
Yeah.
You don't think of Judaism as in any way valid anymore.
Yeah.
And you don't think of the governments of this world as having any role to play in God's governance.
Or being, justice being done through them.
So the embarrassing fact for both the Jews of that day and I think for Jehovah's Witnesses is God uses Roman justice. You might say the image of God in Rome is the justice that Rome made the center of its empire. And of course the Romans weren't particularly consistent in administering justice, and they were barbaric sometimes, but they did have a law which is the basis of our law code today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And God uses that. God honors what is good about Rome to get in the way of this Jewish plot against Paul,
Yeah.
as we'll see in the next segment.
Okay.